you guys. Happy Saturday. I wanted to just take a brief time to go on here after having a couple of things that came up for me during this past week, and also some confirmation I just received from this beautiful circle that I just finished participating in and co-leading with my dear sister Stephanie Levinson. And if you haven't seen some of the work that we've been doing together, I highly recommend that you check it out. I'll post a link below, because just working with her is such a treat for me, and it's such a beautiful work to channel. Really, channeling spirit is what she does, and channeling the higher self of any souls. But anyhow, what I wanted to share is last week, I posted a video and I share an email about how we are being called to come back home, right? And I talked about coming home to your children, coming back to basics, going back to basics of cuddling with your family, hanging out at home, playing board games, taking it back to the dining table instead of always rushing on the go, eating out. But really just coming back to simplicity. And if you have been following my work, you'll see that as far as parenting goes, a lot of what I have been trying to do with my life and with my children, as hard as it is in today's world, is what we call simplicity parenting, going back to simplicity, right? The power of less. But without taking me to another conversation, which it's actually making me realize I should have this conversation with you guys pretty soon. But what I wanted to shed light into right now is that some of the feedback I received came from people who live alone, and they don't have someone to go home to. They don't have someone to be in this quarantine with. They don't have anybody to play with, cuddle with, or do any of those things. And so the first thing that I want to share is first a real sensitivity to that, and she really did raise the flag for me to understand what that is like, to even just be aware that that is a reality for a lot of people. And part of what my message when I was sharing this last week, was the deep layers in how this situation in the world affects people in so many different ways, and ways that we are not even aware of. And so this person that I'm really grateful gave me this deep feedback, and a couple other people did too. They really just said, hey, can you be sensitive to people who don't have family to cuddle with and family to hang out with at home right now, and they're just feeling the power of the isolation even deeper because they're by themselves. And so it just made me pause for a minute to think deeper into what this concept of a sacred lifestyle has been for me, on what I'm speaking about in terms of making your home a sacred space, to make it this nourishing, safe shelter and safety net and sanctuary for you and your family. But as I've dived into it, what I realized is that in the very biggest picture, creating a beautiful space, creating a sacred home is about coming home to yourself, because you cannot have that home be a sacred space if you're not willing to be in relationship with yourself. And so this is on a foundational level what the work I've been doing has been about, because if you know me personally, at the end of the day, you'll know I could care less about what basket you buy, or table, or color mirror, or shape, or size. Like, I can do that stuff with my eyes closed, and I enjoy it. It's fun to shop for things. It's fun to, reorganize. I was talking to one of my clients the other day on this video she watched that I posted a while ago called How to Style Your Home Without Shopping Outside of Your Home, because for a lot of people, this is another reality. I'm kind of rambling today, just so you guys know. I'm going to be covering a lot of things because they're just coming through me right now. But a lot of the big issue I've seen with people who suffer from clutter in my program and in the sacred interior, sacred home work I do is directly tied with being addicted to shopping. So the reason a lot of people I work with have had that much clutter is because shopping is addictive. There's this surge of dopamine we get when we swipe the credit card or insert the chip or go out to buy the next thing, right? So that is creating a different level of restlessness and anxiety for a lot of people who are home now, unable to engage in the shopping sprees we're used to. So again, taking this into bigger context, and all it brings us all back to is self-awareness and understanding that it doesn't matter whether you're shopping outside of your home, in your home. It doesn't matter if your house is pristine and perfect and clear, or if it's cluttered and messy and a complete chaos. What really matters is how you are in control of yourself in that environment, how you feel. So something that might look horrible to me looks beautiful to you and you enjoy it. That's fine, right? And so this person that helped me remember or helped me see this other side of being home by yourself is actually a calling for all of us, whether we have people around us or not, because the journey of a sacred home is about us feeling home within. And so I hope that you guys take the opportunity to be in relationship with yourself during this time. Taking the opportunity to take this time as a gift to do less and know that you are infinite, that your beingness does not depend on how much you accomplish on a physical level, and it also does not depend on whether you have a significant other by your side or not. It also does not depend on whether you are with your children or not. And I say that on a vulnerable personal level because many of you might not know that I have my children with me only 50% of the time. The other 50% of the time they're with their dad. And while we have made the best out of the situation, I feel, I still to this day, even though it's been years of this dynamic, I still feel anxiety when I'm not with my kids. And I crave the time without them deeply, and I try to make the most use out of it so that I can remember to be in relationship with myself. And it's sometimes I joke about it being the gift of divorce, but it also comes with deep anxiety in being alone and having to come to terms with seeing myself and also trusting that they're well. And a lot of people who are alone right now might have family in other states or other parts of the world that might be getting affected in different ways. Maybe they're nurses, maybe they're doctors, maybe they are out there really battling these circumstances, while others are being called to take a step back or many steps back and become comfortable in the nothingness and doing nothing and boredom, in solitude, in isolation. And so I wanted to just share these random thoughts so that we remember to do less and to be more, so that we can remember to come back home to us. This made me also become very curious about reading other types of things that I wouldn't normally read. But one of the things I was reading the other day, and this isn't to make you guys feel heavy at all, because there's enough of that, but it's just to shed, again, light into topics that we might not normally think of. And so one way in which this is affecting people going through grief or people who've lost loved ones in this current moment because they're unable to gather to have a funeral, and they're unable to be together and touch each other and hold themselves and hold each other in their pain and in their grief. There's, other circumstances where people are, like I said, having to actually battle or fight the battle in a very physical way where they're being exposed to it on a first level, right? And so all of this to just share that there's a time and space for all of us. And part of what we do in the Sacred Interiors concept is coming home to yourself, being in a space where you're so aware of what is going through you that you're in complete acceptance, so that the picture for this is being in acceptance is easy when your house looks amazing, when your house feels clean and tidy and organized and beautiful, and then we're like so peaceful and so happy and loving it. But then what happens when it's not, when it's messy, chaotic, when you haven't done the laundry, when you haven't cleaned up, when you haven't painted the walls, whatever? Can you still love your home in that unfinished state? Can you just be with what is as it is in that moment? And so to me, last week's video, last week's engagement, and this sort of conversation that came up of people who are home by themselves, people who are without the blessing of having other loved ones around, or sometimes the challenge of having others around, it's important to just be, you guys. Like, just be. And I know that's such a cliche, and I'm not saying anything new, and it sounds very vague, but I wanted to just allow ourselves to remind ourselves of that. And so I feel like when we are coming into that home space, how can we make the most out of our time without being caught up in the productivity or in the doingness that we were living with before? None of the beauty of your home, none of the sacredness of your home is about how much you spend, how much you do. None of the beauty of you relating to yourself and coming back to you has to do with all this pressure of take this time to learn a new skill, and take this time to finish all the books you haven't finished, and take this time to meditate for 5 hours if you only meditated for 1. Like, I feel like there's so much pressure even in this time when we're meant to just be, to do more and more and more and more. And some of that conversation took me into, well, what is the right balance, right? What is the balance of doing, and what is the balance of not doing? How do we also not let precious time slip, from our fingertips, and it just go into not investing it properly? And my answer to that, this was a question asked to me about, from a few people. My answer to that is, as I've questioned it myself, is that simplicity is the way. What does that mean to you? Can you just do it without pushing yourself so hard that you feel you're going to break? Can you just be okay with reading your body? And that's where the intuitive mind comes in place. That's where your self-awareness also comes in place. And maybe giving yourself the chance to honor what it is that you want to do. So if your body says take a nap, so take a nap. If you're feeling the super powerful energy of being active and doing work and gardening and finally decluttering your room, then do that. And like, what's the rush, you guys? We are all here just to be. So these feedback that you give me when I email you, which, by the way, I don't know, maybe people who know me personally know this, sometimes it's so hard for me to sit there and write these emails when I come from a mindset of I just want to share with you the work that I do in a sort of sales way. I can never do that. I literally have tried that and just sat there with mind blocks of, I just can't sell like that. That's not who I am. So when you do get an email from me, please know that I'm doing it with the utmost compassion, that I'm doing it with the biggest desire to serve you, because that's the only reason I stay sane, and it's the only reason I'm even still here. It's the only reason that I believe any of the difficult times of life have brought to me is I can do this and I can handle it because I'm here for a bigger purpose. And like I said last week, so are you. So this whole video today started with feedback from someone who said, hey, what about people who don't have anybody to play board games with? What about people who don't have a loved one to share their bed with? What about people who don't have a pet to cuddle and they're literally sitting home by themselves, feeling dense and heavy and scared and anxious and isolated because now they don't have anybody around them, where before they were just going out into the world and being around other human beings, and now they're not. And so my answer is, we're all in this together in one way or another. And if we can all, whether we have people around us or not, take this time even more to go home to ourselves, to journey within ourselves, and to feel at home no matter where we go. That would be my gift in that. And so thank you everyone for being here and for keeping up with my ramble of the day. I wanted to recommend a book for those who are wanting to read. And I want to even see if I can read you something from here, because why not? I have no rush. I have nothing to do, nowhere to be. But anyways, this is the book. I know you can't see it because it's in the mirror sort of effect, but it's called The Road Home. And a lot of my Sacred Interiors Academy work is based on this book, actually. Even though I came across this book way after I created my program. So that's just something to, it just blows me away, actually. But anyways, this book called The Road Home, A Contemporary Exploration of the Buddhist Path. And it is really, really beautiful. I was reading this chapter today. Let me see what I can find, if I can share with you some of the things I have highlighted. Let's see. There's so much in here. There's just so much goodness in here. I don't even know what to share with you guys. Let me see where I'm guided into. Okay, this might be it. I talk about this often, and this could relate to what I was sharing before about, things, and this desire for us to be a part of the external world a lot, and to feel like we're being filled by external stuff. And even now, like, a lot of people who are really paying attention to the news and reading articles and conspiracy theories and what the media says. I mean, there's so much that we are consuming right now. And that's a personal choice. I have no judgment against that whatsoever. Everybody has to just hopefully know themselves enough to know how much they can take in without being shifted away from their truth, their inner truth. But with that being said, I often talk about physical materialism and how a lot of the issue with clutter is this addiction to shopping, this addiction to spending, and also this holding on to material things as if they were a permanent thing, right? And so I want to just read you this real quick so that you can have some sense of how beautiful this book is. So it talks about the 3 types of materialism: physical, intellectual, and emotional. And so, let's see. Okay, so I'll read this part. So this person that he's talking about taught that materialism can cause us to fixate or on subtle objects. He realized that we make the mistake of chasing after home, not just on the level of physical comfort, but on deeper psychological levels as well. On the level of intellect, we fixate on ideologies and shut out opposing views, vilifying those who disagree with our perspective. In an even deeper way, we fixate on our emotions, and at the deepest level of materialism, we objectify what it means to be a spiritually mature person. So the physical materialism, of course, the most obvious external way that we chase after safety, and this is directly tying into the home space, is looking for instant gratification through our senses. The sense perceptions can create pleasure and comfort and temporarily ease the anxiety of not feeling relaxed in our own being. And as a side note, part of this conversation has been, what do you do with your time and how do people cope with this anxiety? For a lot of people, is consuming a lot of information, because now we're bound to communicating only in this way. And then for other people, is eating, right? This sort of incessant eating, as if that's going to make us feel any better, which sometimes it does, sometimes it really doesn't, and we actually sabotage ourselves through it. Just shedding light on that. So temporarily easing the anxiety of not feeling relaxed in our own being, but sense pleasures can't ever solve the fundamental issues created by avoiding your own mind. So this to me ties directly into that coming home to ourselves, paying attention to how we feel, what we're thinking, this level of self-awareness, because if that was the only purpose of this isolation, for those of us who are with family members, for those of us who are not with family members, those people who are alone, like I was sharing, I don't have my kids 50% of the time, so I have to do that as well sometimes. And so this is the time to be comfortable with ourselves more than ever. What else can I read you from here? This is also part of that mental capacity. So today I did this workshop earlier with Stephanie, and what we did was tune into, through Kundalini Yoga, which by now you know that's what I love, how can we create strength in our bodies to create a strong immune system? How can we create strength in our mental capacity, our spiritual capacity, our intellectual capacity, our emotional capacity, and our moral capacity? Because like I was saying before, there's deep components to what is happening, and everyone is being called to navigate it at their own way. And this is not to add pressure to anyone, but to remind us to just be. What does that mean to you? So part of the intellectual materialism that he's talking about here is, if we try to create a lasting home from our ideologies, we will always fail, ignoring the moments when reality shifts its terrain and where our ideas also need to shift. There's more. There's emotional, spiritual, and psychological materialism. This is so profound, you guys. I just really wish you guys could read this book if you're interested. I don't even know what else to read because I want to read all of it. But I'll briefly say this. From the standpoint of materialism, the purpose of spirituality or psychology or any practice related to the mind, for that matter, is to use spiritual practices to reliably produce a certain emotion like joy or ecstasy. In their subtlest forms, emotions are actually objects too, objects that arise within the space of our awareness. Emotions are not where we live. Like any other object, they are just regular visitors in the home of our heart mind. When we try to decorate, I love this. Like, this is why I love this book, you guys, because it's just like, I wish I could have written this book. Stacy's asking what book. So it's called The Road Home. a contemporary exploration of the Buddhist path, or Buddhist path. I never know how to say that word in English. Yeah, so just linking it to what it is to have a sacred home. And basically, in a nutshell, is not about even the people that live in your home or about how your house itself looks. It's about coming home to you, in yourself. So here he says, when we try to decorate our experience with certain spiritual emotions like happiness, peace, or bliss, and throw out other emotions like sadness and anger, we invalidate a huge amount of what actually happens to us. A spiritual materialist fixates on feeling like a spiritual person and tries to make a permanent home out of the heightened emotional states that he attributes to his spiritual practice. So this is really, really beautiful because basically it ties into what I was sharing earlier about being very conditional in how we feel based on what the external world looks like. And in this context, the external world is our home. So if our home is in perfect shape, we feel great. If it's not, we feel shitty and we feel guilty and we blame ourselves and we sabotage ourselves. And the same as to what is happening in the outside world. There's many sensitive topics that are affecting the way people think about themselves right now. Their job, losing their job, not being able to produce money as they were used to. Again, those people who are unable to find, help or find support in their loved ones when they're going through disease, when maybe there's relatives who are sick in the hospitals, or people who've died and they're unable to join each other to find peace in that ritual of grief, and funerals are being not held. So much, right? Deep layers. But part of it is, how can we not be conditional with ourselves based on what we do? Again, because we're being called to just be. So this talks about how we pursue human relationship only to make us feel peaceful and ecstatic. And if you haven't noticed, I love to bring light to a lot of difficult topics, sometimes because I really dislike being shallow in that positivity sort of mindset where, it's just think positive. I don't personally agree with that. I think it's really part of the self-awareness is, how do you acknowledge the difficulty in what you're going through and what you're experiencing, and to just have that self-awareness to notice it. And so he talks about how we might fall in love, but only as long as the intoxication lasts. We might work with a mentor or a therapist or a guru, but only if they tell us what we want to hear. We might practice meditation or yoga, but not if it means confronting difficult feelings like anger or jealousy. I might add to it, that we decorate our home and we think it's beautiful, but only as long as we can buy the things that we really want to buy, or the expensive things we want to buy. Or we think we're going to feel really happy when we do spend all the money we want to spend, only to realize that it just doesn't feel good at the end. He says we might buy incense and statues, but only until the odor bores us and the statue's sheen wears off. So just so many layers of the problem with spiritual materialism in general. And so my invitation to you, and I'm just obsessed with this book, you guys, it's super beautiful. This is my third time reading it. But really my calling is to invite you to go home to you, go home to yourself, and take this opportunity that we are being forced into. And I use the word force because it might seem like it, but a more gentle word would be encouraged to. And just go home to yourself, whether you live alone or you have loved ones to spend this time with. We are all in this together, and I wish you the best, and I wish you a beautiful, beautiful journey home to you. Sat Nam, thanks for listening to my craziness, and to everyone for joining me. I see all of you guys here. Jamie, Leah, Lala, Gavi, Danielle, thank you for telling me that I look beautiful. Paola, Stace, Joa, everyone, thank you so much. I hope you guys are doing beautiful. Satnam.